Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today, once again, I'm delighted to be joined by Anthony Haggerty to talk about then and now. You were here a couple of months ago, I think.
Yeah, Zoolander returns, eh?
Yeah.
I'll get a haircut on Sunday, so I apologise if my hair's frightening people.
Well, if you're getting it done on Sunday, hopefully it's a pre-match.
Oh, it's
Tony.
a pre-match of it. That's all been sorted.
We'll talk about that, because, I mean, you were a journalist for 20 years in Scottish sports. Scottish football was your main bag, and you covered everyone from, Neil Lennon first time round, Brennan Rodgers. We spoke about that the last time.
Yeah. And
we also spoke about our concerns around Celtic and around what happens to Neil Lennon.
Yeah.
Someone who you had some great memories of and a deep respect for. And at that time you spoke about how change was required at Celtic Park. Has anything happened in the interim to change your view on that?
I would still advocate a change of manager, personally, but I think it's very hard now to recruit a manager who might be up against it and maybe would not want to be the fall guy if they don't manage to secure the 10. Now, we have noticed in the past 2 games green shoots of recovery, team-wise and results-wise. Performance-wise, the Lille performance was one that came out of nowhere, and they did really well. Got themselves in front 3 times and managed to see the game out. But against Kilmarnock, I wasn't particularly convinced that they were great against Kilmarnock, because the first half was turgid and it took a deflection from El Younousi to get them going. But a lot of things pleased the Celtic supporters. The one main thing being that they won the 2 games, and now the focus is back on Neil Lennon and the team he picks for Sunday. Now, we spoke off camera, there's only one team that Neil Lennon picks on Sunday. It's a winning team. Any combination of players, but he's given Celtic supporters the fear because he used that phrase, the old guard.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that's a sabre rattle to the guys who are currently in hold of the yellow jerseys, or the green and white jerseys, but you know what I mean, to say you're not a shoe-in for the cup final, right? So I think he wanted everyone on their mettle this week in terms of training, and he'll release the team whenever he does, but that's to make sure that they're all singing from the same hymn sheet and they all want in this team, right? But a lot of the supporters, you rise and fall, you stand and fall with these decisions.
Yeah.
Now, why should Celtic go to a major domestic cup final and not play 2 up front? Right? It's a total no-brainer. It's a big, wide, expansive pitch. Celtic function better when they're 2 up front. Now, I wouldn't dream of telling Neil Lennon what team to pick, because he's forgotten more about football than I know, but I think most Celtic supporters would recognise, and if the supporters can recognise that they function better with 2 up front, why can the men who are sitting in the technical area not see that? And to me, if you're going to play 2 up front, it would be Odsonne Edouard and Lee Griffiths. Okay? Because Lee Griffiths can also take free kicks. So you have to not limit your options on a park, but you have to make the opportunity for more options in a park. Turnbull can hit free kicks, Edouard can hit free kicks, Griffiths can hit free kicks, 20, 25 yards, 30 yards. So there's a lot of options there, right? If you're going to play the likes of those guys. But what, we're going to go to Hampden seriously against Championship Hearts and play with 1 up front? And a lot of people are getting on Edouard's case. I think Edouard is genuinely fed up doing the donkey work on his Todd.
Yeah.
He needs a hand. He's got the body language of a man saying, I need a hand, going to give me a hand. And I function better when this guy's playing up beside me. Because Lee Griffiths is a runner, he runs the channels. Whenever he gets the ball, he's thinking about getting a shot away. He's clever. Odsonne Edouard can feed off him. They can link up, play really well. The 2 of them are quite switched on. They're intelligent players. So as I say, I wouldn't dream of telling him what team picking. Then I'm saying he should play these 2 guys, right? But you know what I mean. There's a feeling out there that if one result can lift a team, the result in midweek, and I don't want to dwell on Rangers too much, but this could be the shot in the arm that Celtic need for their season.
Yeah.
To kickstart. It's the ray of light that Rangers can be got at, they can be beaten, teams can score goals against them, they've lost that air of invincibility. They were supposed to be a shoe-in for this trophy, and then if they were a shoe-in for the trophy and they won it, they'd have been talking about the treble and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So now they've lost. Okay, so can Celtic now take that on, that mantle on? You know, you can play them, you can beat them by having shots at goal, which we spoke about the last time. 6 shots at goal last three Rangers games, no good enough. So if a team like St Mirren can score 3 against them, why can't Celtic? You know, why can't others lay a glove on them?
No, you're right. You know, when you talk about the two up top, I find it interesting that Neil Lennon's made the comment about the old guard and this loyalty, the question of loyalty. Well, if you want to look back to the old guard, look back to what changed our season.
Yeah.
And it was the reintroduction of Lee Griffiths.
Yes.
So when we're going into this game, there's what you think and what I think Celtic should do, and then what you think Neil Lennon is going to do.
Yeah. They're two separate things.
Yeah. And there's a moment in the Kilmarnock game where Shane Duffy, and I'm actually really, really happy that he's shown a bit of confidence, he's shown a bit of form. And he plays this pass that Griffiths would have been all over it every day of the week. Kind of down the left, quite a long searching pass. Edouard, 2/3 of the way in, just thought, that's not for me. And he turns round and he's pointing in at the centre of the park, saying to Duffy, that's where I want the ball. If you've got a Griffiths in there, he'll do that running for Edouard.
And I agree with that. So if Odsonne Edouard is telling you, I don't want it down there, why are you putting it down there? Griffiths isn't on the park, so Shane Duffy should be switched on enough to know that.
Yes.
Right? So, but again, Odsonne Edouard should run the channels, but it's not really his game. Give him the ball out 20 yards tight for goal, he can twist and turn and he can beat 2 or 3 with one movement, you know. But he needs a guy to feed off him. He needs somebody to do that running. You know, and I just think I can't. I'm astounded at the thought that Celtic could go into a cup final and play with one striker up front.
I know.
I just it beggars belief, and I think another step on the road to recovery would be if they could beat Hearts emphatically. You know, and that would be a kind of surefire sign and say they're back to winning ways. But you have to earn the right to go and beat Hearts.
Yeah.
This isn't a given by any stretch. And see if they turn up with that kind of attitude. The same thing that happened to Rangers against St Mirren the other night could happen to Celtic on Sunday. You know, you have to guard against all these things happening. You're going for an unprecedented world record 4th treble. Give that the reverence and respect that it deserves. Do not leave any stone unturned in your preparation for this, and pick a winning team. That's all. If I was to give any advice to Neil Lennon, it would be to pick a winning team. And whilst we're on the subject of the team, have you noticed that 2 of the goals that were scored were from corners, which were floated in to the big men at the back, Julian and Duffy? And hey presto, you know, it's no magic, really. You float a ball in and let the big guys at the back challenge for it. You know, Big Billy used to do it when he was a centre-half at Celtic. You know, you don't hit the first man and you don't overshoot the runway. You know, and that's what annoys people about Christie. How can professional footballers that train and train and train, or so they say, every day of any given week, not get a simple thing like a corner or a free kick right? Yet Turnbull's walked into that team and he showed them how to do it. You know?
See the thing with Christie, Anthony, I look at him and I admire many, many aspects of his play, but I do think the focus on a lot of the stuff he does well is taken away from the amount of corners, the amount of free kicks, and often the amount of shots. But I think there is a shoot on sight policy, because I've seen Turnbull doing exactly the same. But there is now a perception that Christie's one of these players that perhaps wants to get away and wants to leave Celtic Park. So when you're watching the performances of Christie, you're watching them through different lenses.
Yeah, you're being hypercritical, aren't you?
Absolutely.
And I admire Christie too. I think he's a smashing footballer. But I think somewhere along the line, his head's been filled with something, because he's taken his eye off the ball. You know, because he's not focused on delivering good set pieces and free kicks and corner kicks, because if he was, he would deliver them. You know, because there came a point in time at Celtic during that run, he was taking everything. It was almost as if Christie was saying, it's my ball. Like any dead ball he was, and more often than not, it was dreadful, and you were being really critical.
It was any free kick, any corner kick.
Any free kick within striking range, striking distance, he was just like, right, mine. It was as if it was a divine right that he had to take it. And they were hopeless. I mean, they're woeful. And I thought to myself, there must be somebody better that can do that. It was like, it used to astound me when Lee Griffiths took corners. I want Lee Griffiths, in the box for the header that comes off the goalkeeper or comes off the post or comes off the defender. I want him in and around there. The ball that breaks.
See, when you look at Turnbull, and he's a player who we've seen a bit of when he was at Motherwell, of course. I mean, there's other guys like Sorrow coming into the team, and I can't claim for a moment that I've been calling for Sorrow to get a game because I hadn't seen enough of him. I'd seen as much as everybody else, fleeting appearances as a substitute. People were calling for even Luca Connell to get a game. They were looking at just about anything. So when I'm thinking of the likes of Turnbull, surely we knew what Turnbull was capable of. And it's unfortunate that we've left it this long to introduce him into the side. When you're looking at Turnbull and Sorrow and also Hazard, they're the three that I think have staked a claim for a starting jersey, Tony. Do you think that might happen? Do you think that Lenny might play either of them?
2 out of 3 might get a game. Hazard might, possibly, but I can see maybe Brown coming in for Sorrow in terms of just that gnarled old veteran, been over the course and distance before. I think Turnbull's a shoe-in because he's offered us something. I spoke before about Turnbull. I watched a lot of Turnbull at Motherwell, and I knew right away the boy was a baller. I said that the last time I was on. He's got it, he just needs more games, and he's growing in confidence with every game, as you say. He's starting to adopt a shooting sight policy, which is fine. I have no objection to that, but he has to be realistic when he's taking shots at goal. If he feels from 20 yards, 25 yards, 30 yards range that he's going to get a decent dig in, then do it. But don't just start hitting wild ones, the way Ryan used to do.
Yeah.
Speculative ones, when you start to do that, then I think, maybe not. But I mean, the goalkeeper's an interesting one. He's not done much wrong, has he?
Well, I just think that you go for Foster. We all know that, and I think it was Neil Lennon's first choice to go for Fraser Foster. But you've got the backup in Barkas with a pedigree. He's an international. It's a huge fee. But I don't think he's been helped by the amount of changes in the defence. And because of that, he's been under the spotlight. First, we've seen it, I think, in the media. They were very critical of him. And then gradually the Celtic fans started being very critical of him as well. We've tried Bain coming in for 6 or 7 games. And again, I wasn't convinced that last season's third choice could be the first choice goalkeeper. And I think what's happened when Hazard's come in is it's coincided, of course, with Duffy finding a bit of form. I don't think he was brilliant against Lille. I think there was still moments where I thought, he still looks unsure. But then again, you look at his performance against Kilmarnock and it was fairly commanding. And I think a big part of that's having a goalkeeper behind him who is instructing all the way through the game. So again, you look at sometimes very, very basic aspects of the game, like you're saying about corners. Make sure it gets over the first man, make sure it's not going to land on the other side of the park. We weren't doing that before.
No.
And I think that now when you're looking at even the simple term of looking at a goalkeeper, he's doing a lot of the simple things. He's instructing, he's commanding. And I think if you drop him at this stage, I mean, Jim Orr was in earlier on today, he was talking about how it will send a big message, a very important message, if Neil Lennon fails to pick Barkas. As he's saying that this wasn't my man in the first place. I'm not going to call him a kid because Hazard's not a kid, but he's very inexperienced at this level.
Yeah.
But then you've got to then think, how's it going to affect Hazard if he doesn't start? Because he must be thinking, well, will I ever be able to establish myself in this side? I'd go for Hazard.
Well, I think, as I said earlier, he's got the yellow jersey, hasn't he? So there is nothing you would say that merits him not to play, other than Neil Lennon's tinkering with the team, which he's been doing all season. And some of his team decisions have left the fans utterly bewildered. Mm-hmm. So this could be another one when he turns around and leaves them bewildered by bringing in Barkas because they paid money for him, or maybe because he just doesn't trust the fact that Hazard's not get enough big game experience. You pointed to Barkas there playing international football and played a lot of big games, so he might revert to type, you know. But again, you stand and fall by these decisions, and it would be a right blow to the. We say he's not young, but it'd be a blow to Hazard to, you know, to have that progress halted now, you know. And these are the decisions that Lennon has to mull over in the next 48 hours, you know, before kick-off, and why he gets paid the supposed big bucks that me and you don't.
The big bucks,
you know. So,
right,
but you know, I think if you canvass the Celtic on a straw poll, they'd want Hazard in, you know, because as you say, on Sunday he looked more commanding than he did against Lille, and I'm allowing for the fact that Lille, he was like the spy that came in from the cold against Lille, you know, and they're a good side,
yes,
you know, and okay, he lost 2 goals, but he had the presence of mind to save that one with his foot. Alright, the boy didn't connect it well, but he still saved it. You know, a lot of Celtic goalkeepers in the past might have been flat-footed, even when the boy didn't connect it right and it got tunnelled in. So first and foremost, he saved it. I saved a shot at goal at a crucial point in the game. So, you know, there's game awareness there. And see, if you're doing the basics right, then that's all we asked. And that run of 2 and 12, Celtic weren't even getting the basics right. And as you pointed out there, Duffy coming back to form, I think Duffy's benefited by having Big Julian beside him. Always thought he would, you know. And these two guys they should be a formidable defensive partnership. Nobody should get past them, you know.
See, when you're looking at that, and I've been a big fan of Chris Ayer, and I know that he divides opinion amongst the Celtic support, but it does feel as though, you know, in comes Hazard, but there's been a few other moves, not because Hazard's coming, of course, but Chris Ayer's been moved to right back because we're struggling for a right back, and Duffy comes back in, he starts performing well. Ayer looks as though he's comfortable at right back, you know, and he's overlapping, and all of a sudden you see a defence that had been absolutely shot to pieces, that nobody feared playing against, starting to take a bit of shape. And I think if we're looking at the team as a whole and going back to the rear guard, one of the biggest ones is obviously the captain, Scott Brown.
Yeah.
What do you think will happen on Sunday in relation to Bruni?
I think he'll play Scott Brown. I think he'll opt for sentiment over sorrow. And that might upset a lot of the fans, but, you know, I think it's just the way the managers think sometimes. I think he wants to go with that experience in there, you know. It's too massive a game. And let's be frank here, Sorrow's played 2 games. Granted, he showed up really well, right? I know it's maybe going against the fact that players with the jersey should stay, but, you know, it is 2 games, we're not getting carried away. He's played well, he's looked the part, right? But I think if this is Bruni's swan song, I think Lennon's going to give him it, you know, and let him bow out on that quadruple high, so to speak. Again, going back to it, they have to make sure they take care of the business on the park. Because at any level, if you're playing confidently and you're winning games, people can say, Hearts are in the championship, but they're still winning games. Yeah. There's a confidence there, and there's also an element of Hearts thinking that Celtic are vulnerable and can be got at.
Oh, absolutely.
Craig Levein certainly does.
I got that from even the pre-match that I was watching yesterday, and Lenny's getting interviewed as we speak on Sky Sports. Now, what I'm going to do is take 2 minutes out, Tony, because there's been a few comments regarding a wee echo in the sound. I'm going to drop the cameras but leave the live broadcast. We'll sort this out. We'll be back to you in just 2 minutes. So apologies for that, but we will be back to you as soon as possible. Apologies for the issues with the sound. We know what they are, but unfortunately, because we've set up, we can't change that. So we're going to run with this, and hopefully it's not so bad that you need to switch off. This will not be an issue during the weekender that we're promoting at the bottom of this page either. Now, Tony, we've spoken about Sunday's Cup final. You're a man who obviously dealt with Neil Lennon when you were working as a journalist. You've got a lot of respect for him. Do you think that a victory on Sunday changes the view of this January review that Peter Lawwell has spoken about?
I don't think it should, depending on the manner of victory. I mean, I think prior to the 2 wins in 12, Celtic fully expected to win the cup final against Hearts. It wasn't even in the equation, but the run of results recently had a lot of them panicking, and I don't think it changes much. He should still be under scrutiny, because they're still lagging behind in the title race, and unless they can, it'll give them a huge boost, but they have to gear everything towards going to Ibrox and winning to reap any kind of benefit. And I'm not dissing a 4th treble, because if they manage to achieve that, it's a colossal achievement, a tremendous achievement. Because we spoke of Cam earlier, you're a bounce of the ball, a deflection, a terrible decision, a red card away from losing any kind of one-off match, and they might well lose on Sunday due to one of those. Hopefully they don't. But, but to reel off 12 trophies in a row, if that's what they do, is something special and unique. As you've said, it's a world record, and it probably will never be done again in any league.
It's so unfortunate, though, after the year that we've had, that we can't see it in person. I mean, we've missed the games, Tony. We're relying on streams, we're relying on the virtual season tickets. But this level of history, I mean, it was disappointing in many ways last year that we couldn't see us winning 9 in a row. Often, I used to look back to Celtic winning the original 9 in a row, and you thought to yourself, that will never happen again.
Yeah.
And then it does, because, of course, before we came on screen half an hour ago or so, we're talking about the fact that I've watched Celtic in 5 different decades. You've actually watched them in 6 different decades.
Indeed.
Which is frightening to think about.
Yeah. I'm 48, so yeah. From 76, 77 onwards, that's my earliest recollection of watching.
But then you never think it's going to happen, and then it happens, and you can't be there. And again, we're in that situation. Taking up everything that's been said from Celtic Park on board, they're saying that obviously we've missed the fans. They're saying that we've been hit more by COVID than others. There's been loads of mitigating circumstances, Tony, but at any point when we were going through that period of 2 wins in 12, did you actually think that, when you're watching Neil Lennon, I had loads of sympathy for him, I've got to say, did you actually think that he could turn it around during that period?
Not during that period. I think he looked like a man who was lost. There was a time when he looked kind of forlorn and lost and didn't know how to address it. Now, I'm not saying the last 2 wins have addressed it, because they haven't. Celtic have to win till they go to Ibrox. Just to build some kind of momentum, to build some kind of pressure on Rangers. Because that's the first major loss Rangers have suffered this season. Mm-hmm. Now, we spoke before it. Celtic would have loved a league game this weekend to build more momentum. As it stands, it's the rearranged Scottish Cup final, and in the grand scheme of things, it's a shame, because an achievement might be lost in the kind of vortex that's surrounding Celtic just now.
Yeah.
And a massive achievement which you say can't be celebrated properly, but there's a kind of ho-hum about it, which eats into my previous point. The ho-hum that you have to get that out of your head. You've got to go and win it, because you'll feel a hell of a lot worse if they don't win it. Mm-hmm. So again, preparation's the key. You have to make sure that you go and win this, and fans can't be there, but at least they get a chance to celebrate it, And on that point, I feel sorry for St Mirren, Hibs, St Johnstone and Livingston supporters who might not get to see their team win the League Cup, and congratulations to all of them for reaching the semi-finals. It's a big thing for clubs like that, winning trophies. Celtic Rangers supporters take it for granted, and That's what annoys me about the humdrumness of a supposed fourth treble.
Yeah.
It's not humdrum at all.
No.
It's a huge, monumental, magnificent achievement. But because of what you alluded to, the run that Celtic have been on prior to that, the 2-12, Celtic supporters now think there's bigger fish to fry. Your main objective is the next game. The next game's the one that could win you a quadruple treble. We deal with that. But I think if you could swap, you would want a league game to try and ramp up any kind of pressure on Rangers to show we're back in terms of a winning mentality. You know, we're starting to get it together again in terms of performance and starting to build, you know, but I still think that there should be that root and branch review of Lennon in January, regardless of the results and regardless if he goes to Ibrox and wins, you know, because it might still be that the club needs a new man at the helm.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at, and again, I don't focus on the podcast, Anthony. I generally do not focus on Rangers. There's plenty of Celtic sites who do, but we're not one of them. But when you're talking about a league challenge or the fact that you're 13 points behind, you've got to speak about the team you're referring to, and that's why we're chatting about Rangers just now. The point you made there about this cup game not getting in the way as such, but it is given an opportunity for Rangers to go even further ahead in the league, and that is a situation where, you know, it might not happen, but I would be pretty amazed if Motherwell took anything at Ibrox. But then you're looking at, right, that's us got 3 games in hand. If we win those 3 games, if we go to Ibrox and win, and they're getting further and further away, and that's unfortunate.
And who's the pressure on most then? It's no in front of the leaders, is it? It's the ones who are chasing.
Yeah.
Because they can't. So every game in those games in hand is a pressure game. Every one of them. Doesn't matter who you're playing. Forget the opposition. You have to go and win them to still stay 7 points.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go to Ibrox and win, which during the run 2-12, Celtic supporters would have ran a mile at the thought of going to Ibrox. It, you know, might be in a wee bit better shape and form heading to Ibrox in the next few weeks. But, you know, there's still concerns there. Because these 2 games, Celtic didn't look like world beaters. They won them. Played. The problem was it was a vast improvement in what had come before.
Yes.
So people are getting blighted by that. They didn't play particularly great in either or of those games. They won a tough game against Lille, showed a bit of character, showed a bit of mettle. Won a turgid game against Kilmarnock with 2 goals in the second half.
Yeah.
So they weren't playing like Lisbon Lions. You know what I mean? Rip roaring, free scoring, never boring Glasgow Celtic. None of that. You know, it was kind of okay, job done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
yeah, I've heard it being referred to as back to basics, get the results.
Let's be pragmatic and realistic, and you know, and if it's that back to basics thing, I've always struggled with that concept. Because see, if you can carry out the basics as a footballer, what are you doing? You know, I shout and scream at the telly or players when I see them. What do they do at training? You know, when they do things that are just, you know, they totally and utterly bamboozle you. You think, why are you hitting a shot from 45 yards? No, things like that. Mm-hmm. Why can you not put in a cross that beats the first defender? Frimpong could run all day. But see if I was teaching Frimpong, I'd say, come here, son, there's 100 balls, go and cross them into my head. Or play them to my feet where I can get a shot at goal. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Because that elevates him. That elevates him. That part of his game takes him to another level, Tony. If he can get that right.
David Beckham took 100 free kicks after training, nearly every training session, till it became second nature, where he planked a ball down 20 yards, 25 yards, 30 yards for goal and curled into top corner. Right? And he did it when it mattered most, when England needed him against Greece. Mm-hmm. And he was in his home surroundings, put the ball down, and it was as if, this is a free shot at goal, don't worry, I've got this. And that's why these players are elevated to that status. The whole of that nation was on his shoulders in that moment, and he never batted an eyelid. He put the ball down and went bang. because I do it every day and it becomes second nature. I'd want to strangle Frimpong. I really do. Because see, when you've got pace to burn like that, and what a huge asset is in today's game, because it's full of athletes, you've got to have an end product. Because see, if you're a road runner, meet me, just open the door. You know? And teams have learned how to play that.
Yeah, they have.
You know, and he's been found out, and he's been found wanting. And again, going back to your point, you now become hypercritical of him because he's not doing, he's not contributing then. What's the point in running 40 yards down the wing to hit the first defender, hit it out of the park, or nothing come of it? You know, and he should be mindful himself to say, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run down that wing and I'm going to cross a ball till it becomes second nature, till I can pick out a man. You know, or somebody should be taking them aside and saying, you know, they look at their laptops every day. They should show them Frimpong's 101 worst crosses or non-productive moments in a match, because there are plenty of them for a man who sees the ball a lot.
Yeah, he does. Yep.
You know, and as an outlet, you know. Ayer, a couple of times he's played passes in for goals, tumbles against Lille, the winning goal against Lille, because he looked up and picked a man out.
Yeah.
Basics that you're talking about. You shouldn't have to tell a player when he's going down the line, look up, see if there's a man in there. That's instinct. You should know that. You should. These are things that should be 2 or 3 steps ahead in your mind. I'm running down here. There's Lee Griffiths. If I go this into, if I put that in that front post area, there's Eddie, French Eddie. He should be there. You know. And if your delivery's good, then it's up to the player to get on the end of that delivery.
Yeah.
But see if you're just running and hitting and hoping, and you're no use.
So it's a shame, because I think there's so much to Frimpong's game that you can't teach. But what you can obviously improve on is the aspects that you've just referred to. I remember him coming into the team, and often he was past 2 players before they had a chance to, what they do now, double up on him. And you know, the jinky play that he brought, it was edge of the seat stuff.
Yeah.
Lenny loves him. Whenever he's fit, he plays. Yeah. Lenny clearly loves him. But you're looking at, on the one hand, the amount of corners that were wasted. I remember in the 2 games, Motherwell and Ferencváros, was 17 corners. And we weren't creating anything from that all of a sudden. And somebody will bring up that David Turnbull hit the first man with his first 3 corners against Kilmarnock. I know that will happen. But overall, we are utilising Ayer, Julian, Duffy during you know, a period of time where sometimes we needed just a cross in and a goal from Julian.
Yeah, a back to basics goal. Right? Now, Julian's good in here. He gets his head on a lot of corners if it's delivered into his area, because he's about 9 foot. So he should get his head to a lot of things. Gets some on target, some not. But see, if you're putting in a ball in there that the taller players can contest, there's a good chance that you'll get something from it. But it has to be a delivery that the big guys can contest. You know? So it's natural that you'd have a player in. So Turnbull's first 3 corners against Kilmarnock are the first man. So he made sure he learned from it. You know what I mean? So that's what's a good thing. Christie was just hitting them on autopilot.
I know.
And overshooting the runway, and these things frustrate the life out of supporters and managers. You know, because you say to yourself, what do you do? At no point have you said, go and hit another cut. Nah, that's no use. At no point have you said, can anyone else hit a set piece, or can anybody else do this? Doesn't look as if they have.
No. And again, that was another aspect of Griffiths' game that we missed in a long periods, because we're now beyond the middle of December. Tony and Griffiths still isn't starting games and getting a run of games. And that concerns me, because the longer it goes on, the more likely it is that he'll disappear into the realms of where Logic was at the beginning of the season. And then someone comes in and inevitably he's gone. And I think that's a shame. And that for me, isn't the way I want to see Griffiths' career ending at Celtic. Because I totally agree with you. I think, and so does Jim Orr, who was on earlier on this afternoon, I think that that partnership, you know, what we witnessed last year between Edouard and Griffiths is a partnership that works. Now, we've seen it for years, down the years, 2 strikers that seem to know how the other one plays. They complement each other's style. And that's what happens with Edouard and Griffiths. Now, you take away a Yeti, £5 million signing from West Ham, Swiss international, previously an £8 million buy by West Ham. He's not a bad player, but the way we are playing doesn't suit him. He's not a lone striker, and at the moment you're looking at him as a bit of a waste. He's a wasted jersey, because if we start with one up front and he's the one, he gets very, very little. So he's on the bench, and often what you see is a like-for-like change between him and Edouard. So the only option I've seen that works between the 4 strikers is the 2 guys you've mentioned.
I don't care how fit or unfit Griffiths is. You want to win this cup final. My old man was an amateur football manager for years, and I used to say to him tactics and formations, and he said to me, "There's only one formation in football, Tony." He says it's 4-4-2 if it's played right. He says your front men will score if you get the ball to them. Right? You're talking about back to basics. I would advocate that for the cup final.
Yeah.
Right? And there is no other combination at Celtic Park at this moment that will do other than Griffiths and Edouard, because as you say, they do complement each other. They have an understanding. They developed it, and for some reason Celtic ripped that form book up at the start of this season. It's the one that served them so well when they came back from Dubai.
Yes.
And they were battered in teams because these two were on fire and they were getting the ball to them. Now, I don't know what happened along the way. They thought they could get better. And I think Haggerty was a knee-jerk to maybe missing out on Ivan Toney. And everybody's going, he's scoring hundreds of goals for Brentford. Very true. But I think Jim touched on it. Were you going to pay 10 million quid for a 4th division player or a 4th tier player? No, you weren't. Or Celtic weren't. But they were told that's what the asking price was, so looked elsewhere, got a Yeti. And there's a player in Yeti somewhere, but Yeti falls out with himself at times. If he's not falling on the floor. There's a wee bit of trying to con referees and stuff, and I don't like that about his play, because I think when he focuses, he can do it. Like at Tannadice, when they bailed him out, got the shot on target, which wasn't an easy goal. The one that Turnbull played through to him at Hibs, finished it lovely. So there's a modicum of a player there, but maybe like everyone else, he's maybe not grasping it, what it is to be a striker for Celtic at this moment in time. It's too important to be laissez-faire about it. Maybe looking at Edouard and thinking, but Edouard's 10 times the talent that he is. You know what I mean? So, and as I say, I just implore, and I urge Neil Lennon to play with 2 up front on Saturday. If we go in with 1 striker, then I think that gives Hearts a confidence boost. I really do.
Well, you've seen how it worked or didn't work at Easter Road recently.
Yeah.
And, we had, and I've got to say this, a great fairy tale story developing at Haddington Athletic, into the first round of the Scottish Cup for the first time in their history. They'll find out who they're playing on Saturday. It's a Boxing Day clash. But the coach of Haddington has been in and around this studio all season. And I ask him about tactics. And he tells me Hibs are going to play like this. And you watch the game and they do. And it works. And they don't fear Celtic playing with 1 up front, because we don't have the width, Tony, to stretch that back line. And only when we bring on Griffiths with 19 minutes to go do we actually start stretching him. And that's when the game changes against Hibs at Easter Road. So I think you're right. I think if
and Pataudry as well, he changed the game there, and they still couldn't hold on to when they went 3-2 up with less than 5 to go, or 6 minutes to go. St Johnston, he changed it there as well. So he has so much to offer. And see if you're going to turn and say, well, do you know what, you can start going to give me an hour if you're no fit. Or 70 minutes, whatever, 70, 75 minutes. And by that point, you're hoping to be in command. I just think if you play with 1 up front, it sends the wrong message out in a cup final. The aim of cup finals is to go and win them. Go and win them. Go and try and batter Hearts and get your confidence levels up by going straight at them. You play with 1 up front, then you are inviting a nervous game on. It's not being disrespectful to Hearts, because Hearts have still got, in effect, a Premiership team. So that's why they're battering teams in the Championship. And they're looking good. And they're a good side. and they've got a good manager, and I've got a lot of time for Robbie Neilson, because I think he's got something there. You know, he's got a good managerial brain, and in a way, I found it unfortunate. It was unfortunate for him that a lot of Hearts fans unfairly blamed him for Hibs winning the Scottish Cup when his team were 2-0 up, and they managed to blow a 2-0 lead to each. Hibs came back and then went on to knock them out, and you know, people blamed him, but there was a lot of things that happened before that happened, you know. So, but he knows how to set up a team. So, if you're Neil Lennon, you know there's a man who's got a bit of tactical nous in the other technical area. So, why not just, you know, surprise everybody and just revert back to, you know, January onwards, and you know, and get the ball to, because if you feed those guys, they'll score. Bottom line, you know, it doesn't matter who's going down the flanks. If you can get the ball to those two strikers, they'll score, and they'll score at Hampden. And teams like Hearts have to go some to beat Celtic and the likes of Celtic and Rangers at Hampden when they're playing. When, not saying they're on top form, but when they're on form, you have to produce your A game. But see, if you don't, you can easily come a cropper.
It's a repeat of the 2019 Scottish Cup final, and I think back to that game, it wasn't an enjoyable game to watch. I mean, there was euphoria after it, obviously, and a lot of Celtic fans, that euphoria died down pretty quickly when they heard that Celtic had given Neil Lennon the job permanently. But you know, when I think about that, Tony, and I think about the success of last season, and obviously this is now part of that, this will be the third part of a jigsaw, hopefully, that gives Neil Lennon the treble. It's difficult for me to say that he should never have been given a job. This is the thing. People have this great ability to, you know, look at a situation with hindsight and say he should never have been given a job, and that's based on where we were during a 2-12 losing streak or winning period where we only won 2 games. But he got it right last year. It's this year that he hasn't got it right. So see, when you start looking at some of the names that were mentioned, where do you think that this Celtic board, where do you think they would pitch a new appointment? Because a lot of people thought it's a downgrade last time round from Brendan Rodgers to Neil Lennon. Do you think we'll start looking at an upgrade, or will we be looking around at people like, and I've seen some of the names mentioned, you know, Jack Ross, for example, at Hibs, or looking at managers who are unemployed? Where do you think Celtic's board's going to pitch this?
First and foremost, Neil Lennon was brought in to steer them over the line. And he did that emphatically when Rodgers left. There was a massive void created when Rodgers left. The world had ended, and he brought in the man, probably the only man at the time who could have stepped in at short notice and steered them over the line and galvanised the club and made them appreciate how important it was to clinch the third treble. So he was brought in to do that job. That should have been it. Because if Peter Law was to be believed that a lot of people would want the Celtic job, why didn't he do their due diligence then? And all those files and all those applications that were supposed to be sitting in his drawer. Still one of the most coveted and sought after jobs in football. Or it should be. But the more you see interference and stuff from the top, it becomes less so to would-be candidates,
I would say so, right? Definitely.
So, now, if Celtic lose the 10, or they don't clinch the 10, what do? Do you go toe-to-toe with Rangers and then just try and slog it out and go bargain basement with your Jack Rosses of the world? Or do you do what they did after they lost the Scottish Cup semi-final and go up, an upgrade, as you say? Now, an upgrade to me would be somebody like Eddie Howe. And a lot of Celtic supporters are like, I don't want Eddie Howe. Why would you not want Eddie Howe, who instilled a culture in Bournemouth, a footballing culture, and took them up to the top flight when Bournemouth had no right to be there, and kept them there? And then, because he never left when his stock was high, it just became a season too far and a bridge too far to keep fighting and fighting and fighting against the inevitability of relegation for clubs like Bournemouth. It's going to happen to Sheffield United. It always happens to West Brom. Definition of a yo-yo club. You know, they have one good season. You know, Norwich, clubs like that, it can't be sustained. You know, managers need to know when to get out of these places. You know, But I don't think Celtic are in a position to turn their nose up at somebody like Eddie Howe. And then you've got the fantasists who want Pochettino and Ragnick, or whatever, how you pronounce his name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pochettino, forget that. You know, Ragnick, possibly. My answer to these things are, if these guys have been speculated, been linked for the job, have you asked the question? Go and ask the question, because you're not going to get an answer if you don't ask a question. But don't insult our intelligence by saying millions of people or hundreds of people lining up for this job without telling us who.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But if you do your due diligence, then if we can identify candidates like that, why can't the Celtic board? Why can't the Celtic board say, do you know what, Eddie Howe's a young thruster, it's what we need. Rodgers had lost his mojo. Young enough. We gave him his thrust back, his mojo back, you know, and he took it and he gave us some brilliant, brilliant times. And you thank him for that. A lot of the fans still will not forgive him, but personally I thank him for that, because unprecedented time in history in the club, you know. And so why wouldn't you want a manager like Howe? Somebody explain to me why. Jack Ross, I think's got ability as well, and then people say no, he's no Celtic class. But somebody explain what that term means, Celtic class. You know, if you're a good manager, you're a good manager. You'll work with players, you'll do it. You know, you'll be successful. You know, because again, it comes down to your ability. You know, would Jack Ross do well with a club that has money? Granted, he was at Sunderland and he failed in the playoff. You can lose a playoff final, no bother. You know, that's neither here nor there. But you know, if you're serious, then be serious. Go and approach serious candidates. Go and speak to Rangnick. Go and speak to Eddie Howe if you haven't already. Eddie Howe is out of job. Right? He's out of job, so, you know, have the conversation.
No, you're right.
And that, the problem with this is it's I always find it disparaging to talk about these things when Neil Lennon's still in the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost disrespectful. But it's just an indication of the way, or the feeling amongst the Celtic supporters now. Despite the fact that they could win the quadruple treble on Sunday, there's still an uneasiness and an unsteadiness and an unsureness moving forward. And they're worried about Ibrox. I don't care what Henry says. They're worried about Ibrox, because Ibrox could hammer the nail in the 10 coffin if it doesn't go the Celtic's way.
You know, when you're looking at these managers, and I agree with you in terms of let's get the best possible candidate we can attain. Do you think the period where Rodgers was in charge showed us that if you go for that manager, what that comes with is various demands that perhaps Peter Lawwell isn't prepared to bow down to? And do you think that might be a problem with bringing in that standard of gaffer again?
Yeah, because the board had great kudos when they brought Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers would never have came if he didn't have complete control on autonomy. Same with Martin O'Neill, right? At all clubs, eventually people from the top muscle in. They do. But Brendan Rodgers was having none of it. Mm-hmm. At the first hint of that, he jumped on the first train down the road.
Yep.
Just wasn't having it. You know? And again, you can hate him for that, or you can sort of say, you know what? But a grudging respect for that, actually, that he didn't want, didn't want people to identify players that weren't his. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing, And then, you can turn around and say, well, some of the players that have been brought into Celtic recently, not the manager's choice. That's the big $64,000 question. Mm-hmm. But when interference comes from the top, what managers want to work under that? What manager worth his salt will say, well, wait a minute, I want control. If you're a manager at all, you'll say, I want full control over the football side. I pick the players, I pick the team, It's all on me. You deal with budgets and stuff, you tell me what budget I've got, I'll adhere to that. You want cuts made, I'll try and adhere to that. You give me a transfer kitty, I'll stick to that. That's my job. That's what I would say if I was a Celtic manager. But you don't interfere with the football side of the operation. You're the chief executive or the CEO of the company or the club for a reason. You're good at that kind of thing, number crunching and figures. I'm a football manager, not a coach. Football manager. I'm old school football manager. I deal with players. I deal with transfers. I deal with, ins and outs. My remit. I deal with results. I deal with wins, losses, and draws. And if it's not good enough, it falls on me. Any manager worth their salt will say that's my terms and conditions.
Otherwise, you're in a situation, Tony, where maybe 3 out of 6 transfers aren't really your boys, they're not really your signings.
And your decisions are being overridden by people above you.
Yeah.
What's the point then? What's the point in being a football manager? If you turn around and say, I want this, nah. Why would any manager want to? And especially at a club like Celtic, who, under Rodgers, and we touched upon this the last time I was here, reached an unprecedented level of professionalism.
I know.
Not since possibly O'Neill, but certainly going back to Jockstein, who has that famous quote in the telly, who said he would never have came back if he didn't get full control, right? And he meant full control. See, and what does history tell you when you give managers full control? You're pretty successful, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Right? O'Neill, Stein, Rodgers,
You can build a dynasty.
You can build something big and tangible success, and you can all share in it. You're still there, you're still part of it. You don't need to be poking your nose in, and you just there's so many. There's more questions than answers with the board at Celtic, and the hierarchy. That's the problem, and that's what frustrates supporters, and the wheels coming off the barrel in this season of all seasons.
Absolutely. When you look at the 9 in a row as well, Tony, where you think, well, Lennon gets his first job as a manager, first time round. Ronny Deila, who was a highly rated coach in Norway, who had been promoted to the top league and won it. Is he going to come to Celtic and make loads of demands? No, not at that stage of his career. And then Lennon, second time round, unemployed after everything that happened at Hibs. So the only manager of the 4 tenures, if you like, would have been Rodgers. And then once it became clear to Brendan Rodgers that he didn't have a level of control that he would have expected, as you say, he's gone. So there would be a huge sea change required if we were to employ someone of that level.
I know, but what's the common denominator there in Brendan Rodgers' time? We won everything. Everything there was to be.
Yes.
We won everything. Even had a season where they never get beat. Only Arsenal down south have done that. So somebody explain to me why they can't attract another manager of that calibre to do that job under those circumstances. Because history tells you these are the most successful managers in the club.
Yes.
So it's that these kind of things that astound me that people upstairs can't see. And I'm not decrying Peter Lawwell per se, because Peter Lawwell's done a superb job for the club. Some of the transfer fees that we've got in for players is, you should be wearing a mask, playing in Scottish Premiership football and commanding multi-million-pound fees. We've put Celtic on that map, But again, that's his forte. He knows how to conclude and conduct a deal. Sometimes, we sell on clauses and stuff. Transfer deals are protracted and give you heart failure at times. But and he's presided over a time where they've won 9 league titles in a row, but this was the one that mattered to everybody.
Yeah.
It mattered to everybody. And they've shot themselves in both feet. They've combusted and handed a massive advantage. And again, played Russian roulette with the Champions League.
Once again.
If they'd qualified for the Champions League in all of these seasons, Rangers wouldn't be in their slipstream. They would not have a chance of catching up in the next 4 or 5 years. It could have gone on.
Oh, there's no doubt.
If you're long-term thinking,
if you tap into that,
even with manager changes, a priority should always have been getting into the Champions League.
Get those players in situ for those qualifiers, 100%.
And get the money, and also as well, I get back to it. If you win 10, write your own cheque. Diaries, post-it notes, bottles, mugs. You'll get all the money back. This mythical, magical 10 figure because it's never been done before. So people will snap up anything with 10 on it, and Celtic merchandise, you know. So surely there was. I get the pandemic and they were reining themselves in a bit, but you know, surely this season was the season to all but throw the kitchen sink at it and ensure it. Because Celtic should be 13 points clear at this moment in time. Not the other way around.
No, absolutely not.
If you've planned it out, you know, and to the letter and to the nth degree, and then going back to your talking about the manager, the way the board conducted themselves over the manager, it didn't leave you with any faith in that they had a forward plan and they know what they're doing in the future, you know. So what did they do? They backed the manager, and then backed him again to the point where the fans were getting angry, and those protests didn't sit well with me. But fans are entitled to protest, but you have to channel that energy and that anger in a way that it's not perceived to be law breaking and, you know, and disrupting others.
Definitely.
I don't. Fans are allowed to see, because they've paid a lot of money, and they've paid a lot of money this season not to watch their team. But they thought they were buying into the 10.
Exactly. You know, you're buying into this situation, Tony, where you're contributing to that.
Yeah.
You know, that was the kind of great belief of the Celtic support.
And they were asked not to ask for a refund. Yeah. And a lot of them bit the bullet on that. And during a global pandemic when money was tight, and they've been served up, you know, bog standard fare, I think would be the phrase, so far. And they're angry, you know. And I hate to use the word entitled with regards to Celtic supporters, but the way they've been reacting, some of them, you question that. It's questionable. I don't think there's such a thing as an entitled Celtic supporter, or supporters out there that feel entitled, but you know, the way they're reacting makes you question their motives. You know, you can protest, but you can do it in a far more effective way than throwing barriers and banners that, I don't know, that just they're dubious. You know, it's be smart. You know, I mean, as you see, you and I were advocates of the manager being removed from his post, but we weren't, you know, shouting and screaming and being hysterical about it. Trying to be measured about it, produce facts and stats and reasoned discussion.
And as you say, put it on a platform that others can join the discussion.
And that momentum can gather pace, and you know, and you like-minded souls, you know. They're just angry at the thought that 10 could be disappearing, and they're lashing out, and they are lashing out at the right people, but they're going about it in the wrong way, you know. How do they go about it? Well, that's another thing, isn't it? But you know, just be a bit more organised. You know, this kind of ragtagging, bobtail kind of pitchforks storming in the Bastille. You know, is that the way they're going to conduct their business?
I've always felt Celtic fans were organised, you know. I always felt that, you know, they were able to do that at a time where it was difficult in the 90s.
The Green Brigade in particular,
yes,
I thought had an element of organised, a almost military style organisational element, you know. So you want to protect. I'm not. They pay good money, and I want to sit here and say that I'm behind their motives for protest. I get why they're protesting. They're angry and they're hurt because they see history slipping away here. But you have to be smarter. You have to box a bit more cleverer than that. You know, and that's all I would say to them. I'm behind them. If they want change, then they have, and they want to try and enforce it, then so be it. But just be a wee bit smarter. You know?
You are a massive football fan. You get that passion speaking to you, Anthony. But you were able to live one of your dreams and write about it for many, many years. And the last time you were here, we spoke about a project that you had embarked upon, and that was to write your first book. Your first book. Now, I've read so many football books. We've talked about that before, and there's some that I can't go by. There's some obscure ones that I rate and regard very, very highly. But there's also a lot of football books that are formulaic in their style and a wee bit boring, a wee bit bland. So when you start to write your first book, Tony, talk to me about this concept that you have had and how you've actually seen it to fruition.
During lockdown, as I say, I left after 20 years, and this was it was driven by a personal ambition, and I wanted to convey how I love football, right? And I thought, well, I was 20 years as a sports writer, you've got to be able, and I wanted something tangible to show for that, and it was not for monetary gain or anything like that, because you'll know football books don't really sell, so that's nothing to do. But I just wanted something to turn around and say, do you know what? I spent 20 years at the Record, and here's a kind of chronicle of that. So I sat down, and it was actually Cliff Pike from House TV who challenged me on Facebook to name the 10 players that influenced the way I thought about football.
Right.
That picture challenge where you put up a picture. To a writer, that's no use. So I put up pictures, and then I started to put explanations why.
Mm-hmm.
And it started off kind of 5 or 6 lines, and then started becoming like essays, right? And then people were like, "Oh man, you should collate these and put them in a book." And you know me, and you know my nature. I was never egotistical enough to think that anyone would want to read it, let alone buy it, right? So that's first and foremost in my thinking. But then, as I was kind of going through the 10, more and more people on Facebook were saying, "That's really good, oh, I didn't know you did that," and it's yada, yada, yada. And then I thought, is there any mileage in this, So I sat down and looked down, and I collated the 10, and I now have, it's only 108 pages long, but it's 20 chapters of anecdotal and emotional stories from my time at the Record, and featuring some of the higher profile personalities and some not so high profile that I met. So to give you an example, there's a chapter on King Kenny, Maradona, David Cooper, Charlie Nick, Jim Baxter, George Albert / Paul Gascoigne, Bobby Murdoch, John Lambie, a player called Antoine Semenyo, who if you read the book you'll realise why he's a big part of my life. So that's off the top. George Best, Dennis Bergkamp, I'm trying to think who else. And I never met all of these people, but they're important to me in a football sense, because this is not a book targeted at any specific club supporters of any team. Mm-hmm. This is a football fans book, first and foremost. Any football, in fact, some non-football fans have read it already and said it's great because of that family thing, And Hugh MacDonald, who, beautiful writer, wrote for the Glasgow Herald, now writes columns for the Daily Mail. Beautiful writer, an even more beautiful person. I asked him, could he read it, because he reads everything. He's just one of the most well-learned men I've ever met in my life. I said, could he read it and write my foreword? And he did, and he summed it up brilliantly. As I said to you, the foreword's better than the book, he said it was my love letter to football. And I thought, I was moved to tears when I read it, because it kind of goes on a bit. And I thought, do you know what? I couldn't have summed it up any better myself, and that's what it is. And it's always that kind of, you're always frightened with these things because you think you're coming across as the big I am. I was always pretty humble as a journalist. Do you know why? Because I love football, and I loved the fact that I was doing this. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe I was doing it at times. And I was always so grateful for it, and the people you met and the things that you did that you can take to the grave, and you just think, wow. I say to you, we were laughing because I said every time you had a moment, talking heads would be in your ear, and you may ask yourself, how did I get here? And you just pinch yourself, and you'd be like, wow. And it's not something I ran about telling people and say, guess who I spoke to, guess what I did. Because I was never like that. It was never about that. It was always about the football. I just loved the game, and I was like a big kid every day I went to work. I kind of just laughed and smiled, and I can't believe I'm doing this, you know. And I was always self-deprecating to the point where I would say to people, I'm living proof that you can fool all the people all the time, right? So, and it got me through because it kept you planted, basically. And I think there's a working class thing with it as well, which is where the title comes from. The title's called Gonna Gi's a Kick of Your Ball, Mister, right? Which was I don't know if it was an East Coast or but it's certainly a West Coast colloquial phrase. When usually when you were a kid, you would want to play with the older guys, and they had big sidies. There was like 20 a side, and you would just kind of sidle up and go and give a kick of your bum. I said, "I join in. There you go in that team." And you know, these games just happened. A spare bit of grass, a game developed. You know, so that was kind of going to give a kick of your bum, Mister, that kind of thing. So, and it was also the last thing I said in the Daily Record when I left. They kind of presented me with some lovely gifts, and I said a wee kind of speech as you do when people leave, and the last thing I said was thanks for giving us a kick of your ball, Mister. So it was in my head. I thought that's not a bad title for a book. And so I thought, okay. And I said to you this off camera, but I'll tell you, I was friends with a guy who reached a level of success in his chosen career, but then had some difficulties and had therapy and for various addictions and stuff. Now gladly out of it, but he said a sponsor said a brilliant thing to him, and it struck a chord with me because his sponsor said to him, "Who do you think you are? These stories aren't yours. You don't own them. You have to share them, and only by sharing can you reclaim ownership of them." And I thought, wow, it was, and it was just a throwaway line, and it struck a chord with me. And I thought, do you know what? If any football fans out there are interested, then I would urge them to go and read it, because they might laugh, they might cry, but they'll recognise themselves in it, because this is just what every fan of a team wants to do, or the career that they'd maybe pictured in their head, and somehow by divine providence this wee guy for East Kilbride lived that out and loved every minute of it and was grateful for it, and this is my way of saying thanks for that. I'll never forget it, and here's a wee insight into what it was like. And it's different, as you say. I know a lot of football books are boring and formulaic. I've just kind of ripped that up. It's just a particular person, and here's why they're important to me. And, you know, that some of them are the fact that I ended up meeting them, you worked with them, you dealt with them in a professional capacity. But I've tried to keep that humorous thing in. My family features through it, because that's a kind of thread. And you follow football because of your family. Whether it's your mother, your father. I said the last time that hand that love of football down. And my father took me to see Clyde initially. We went to Shawfield and he would buy me corgi cars. I'd be rolling them up and down. The 76-77 season, Craig Brown was the manager for enough. So I'd be rolling them up and down the wooden benches. And one day, particular day, we heard a roar. And I turned to my dad, I'm 4, just cycled him and said, "Do you think Kenny Dalglish has scored for Celtic? Do you think Celtic are winning?" And my dad's sitting at Shawfield like, what are we doing here, you know? So from then on, we went to Celtic Park, and it was just life-changing, you know? It was just everything beautiful that I thought it would be, you know, and just opened my eyes to football and just how much love you could get from it, and despair and tears and snorters, as they say. But
a wee bit of despair in the last wee while, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, so you and it just that was the start of my, as you say, love affair, and now this love letter to it, that which and I say I would never have thought about it unless people on the Facebook platform saying, "Look, you should really do something with these." In their words, they were too good to just go to waste. And as I say, I was like, well, it's not in my nature to say, I think that's brilliant, I think I'll do this. It took a lot for me to But because I had time during lockdown, I sat down and you agonise over, you've written football books, you agonise over the slightest things. But my reaffirmation came from Hugh MacDonald, who, as I say, reads everything. And if he'd have turned around to me and said, you know what, aye, it's good, but no, don't do it. But the first thing he said to me was, brilliant, do something with this. That's all he was. And so I was like, okay, maybe there is something. As I say, it's a kind of book you can read in a day, like no less than a day, in a few hours. You know, a book in a flight or on a beach or something. You can dip into it if somebody happens to mention a particular incident, a moment, a player. You'll think, oh, there's that chapter. I remember that was funny, or that was poignant or emotional or whatever. So I'd like to think that there's something in it for everybody. As I say, it's not aimed at any specific supporter of any club or team. It's just a recognisable kind of football book that everybody will kind of they'll get. If you spoke last night, if you're a football fan, you'll get this
exactly
right off the bat.
Yeah, because there is those elements. And again, I'm going to go back to the Haddington story, because I was shown footage of them scoring the winning goal in a Scottish Cup qualifying game, where for that moment, or for the few seconds after it, it doesn't matter if you're playing in the new camp or you're playing at Recreation Park in a qualifying game for the Scottish Cup. That emotion, that passion, that unbridled joy, that's why you get into football.
That's football.
That's why you're there. That's why you get into it.
It doesn't matter at any level. If you score an important goal, you know, or at Hampden or in Hackney Marshes, the feeling's the same. That euphoric moment, you see that moment in time, you know, and that way, as well as being in a new camp for the Haddington boys. It was the same a few years ago when Ronnie Dyler's team played East Kilbride.
Yes.
I was at East Kilbride, Lothian Thistle, Hutchie Vale, at Cave Park, and it meant the world, and it meant the world to me, because some of the guys that were involved in East Kilbride were personal friends of mine, so I knew what it meant to them. And, you know, and you were just like, these guys are going to play Celtic. You know, and I'm sitting in my hometown watching the hometown team, who newly formed a few years, and they've got a crack at Celtic and they win 2-0, and the place was just, you know, the town was buzzing for the weeks before it, and you know, and I had to go and be professional and interview guys who had stood in the boozer with, you know, and they're donning East Kilbride club tie as chairman and thing, and I'm saying, and they're like, all right, tonight, right, I need to switch this on now. You know, what does this mean? And they're like, I'm like, no, I've got a job to do here. Can you be professional for like 10 minutes of your time, you know? And but what a buzz that was. It was terrific, you know, and I can understand the Haddington thing. Yeah. I totally get that, because it's brilliant. And it's about, I told you, football's about dreamers.
It is.
You're looking at one. There's one sitting talking to you now, just head full of broken bottles and biscuits, but, you know, just achieved a wee dream and achieved a wee personal ambition as well to write this. So I just kind of, football, if you take that out of football, then close the doors, shut up shop, you know. And I love the fact that we spoke about it earlier, that Hibs, St Johnstone, Livingston and St Mirren are now dreaming about, you know, it might seem strange to say this as a Celtic supporter, but you see sometimes, see when one of the big two don't win the big trophies, and you see the amount, see the unbridled joy that those supporters have. You look at Hibs winning the Scottish Cup 2016.
I know the scenes.
114 years. I mean, absolutely incredible. And my pal Cliff, I'm glad he got to see that. I was working that day, and that moment where the final whistle went, that will live with me forever. And it's just, you know, you're just standing there and you're like, wow, just wow, you know, it's a wow moment in sport, because it become a joke for so long, you know, the 114 years, and you just...
Hibsed it.
Aye, Hibsed it, exactly. I mean, it entered into the Scottish football lexicon.
Yep.
Hibsed it. It's a phrase, you know, you've Hibsed it, you know, and brilliant. And for all those supporters and generations of Hibs supporters who never saw it, their dads, granddads and stuff like that, you know, and for that actual generation to witness that, I mean, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
It's true what you say, though. It's such a shame for those clubs in that position. One of those clubs is going to win the national trophy, the League Cup. And it's unlikely, or, they'll certainly not be doing it to a capacity crowd.
Yeah. And
So that's a shame.
And you know what? See these people that say take it away from Hampden? I say don't. I'm a bit of a traditionalist that way. And she say, oh, but Hampden looks terrible with no fans in it. And I'd say the same, even if it was at Hampden. And see if you care that much about that game that day and you're voicing your opinion and there's no crowd, go and buy a ticket. Mm-hmm. Go along. Pick one of the teams. You don't need to support them. But go and stand in their end and go and watch the faces of the supporters of that team and tell them that it doesn't mean anything. Go and observe that for a day. And I tell you what, you've changed your mind in a heartbeat.
No, absolutely. Because it means everything.
Go and pay your hard-earned cash and give the game a shot in the arm. Don't sit there and moan and say, oh, Hampden's rubbish when there's only... See if there's only 3,000 turn up for a St Johnstone and Livingston final or whatever. 3,000 people want to see their team win that cup. We spoke the last time. It doesn't matter how many people are there. They're the ones that care. They're football fans to me. They're real fans.
You've given me a flashback talking about that East Kilbride game. Colin Kazim Richards, who's now scoring goals for Wayne Rooney's Derby. Yes. It's strange football, eh?
Yes.
It's a strange old world. Now, tell us where we can find your book. How can we get a copy of it?
You can go on to Amazon, and if you key in Anthony Haggerty, it'll come up with Going to Gi's a Kick of Your Ball, Mister, with my fizzog and a famous picture, which you'll talk about probably in a minute. And it's available on Kindle and paperback, $5.99. If anyone wants to buy that, I would be eternally grateful. And if you do buy it, I would ask that hopefully you enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Give us a taster, right? You're talking about living your dreams, meeting people that...
Right. Well, the front cover is a distorted picture of my face and Diego Armando Maradona. There you go. It sells itself, that picture there. And the circumstances where that came about were just utterly incredible. Now, my love affair with Diego began in '79. Well, just slightly before, because the World Cup was in Argentina in '78, and I knew all about him, but he was too... Louis Cesar Menotti said he was too young to play. Arguable, but hey. So, they come to Hampden in '79, Argentina, and Diego scores his first goal, Scotland, at Hampden. They hammer Scotland 3-1, but Diego, they show that Napoli clip, Live is Life with Opus 3, and Diego's kicking the ball up and doing that brilliant warm-up. He was doing that when he was 17 at Hampden. And I said to you before, he was doing he invented the crossbar challenge long before it was ever invented. He could have the crossbar for 100 yards away. He was just brilliant. But that day, my old man took me and he said, watch him, and I'm like, aye, I'm going to watch nothing else, And so we were standing there and the pipe band comes on marching, Amazing Grace and all that stuff that they play, and as the SFA thought that served as entertainment, So they're walking from one end of Hampden to the other, and Diego gets the ball and he skies it as high as he can in the air. And this is like it's snowing it, and it's taking about 10 minutes to come down. And then on the volley, he cushions this volley, and it's flying like an arrow above the pipe band as they're marching. And it's just like, it's as if it's keeping in time with the music and the band. And just as they get to the opposite end, the ball bounces. And I look at my dad and he's like, did you see that? And I went, I saw it. And I think, wow, this guy's something else. So, like everybody else, everyone in Scotland that was there, they fall in love with Diego. Fast forward to 1982, because you don't get to see him on a weekly basis, you get snippets here and there. World Cup 82, Argentina play Brazil and Italy. They qualify for the group stages, from the group stages, and they play Brazil and Italy in the next group. And he plays against Italy, and Claudio Gentile fouls him 23 times, a world record on a football pitch for any one man fouling another man. And it's the equivalent of, and I've said all this in this chapter in the book, a foul on him every 4 minutes. Imagine that. And you're not talking, there's some niggles, but They're knee-high crunchers, right?
Skything,
The lot,
yeah.
right? Claudio Gentile, the master of the dark arts of defending. So, that's my argument based there on why Diego Maradona is the greatest of all time. Claudio Gentile fouled him 23 times in one match. Still a world record. Sin died, Gentile, if he played the day, right? So, Maradona was not a protective species. Messi and Ronaldo are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, comparison of players as errors. Could Maradona have played now? He'd be king of the world. Could they have played then? Don't think so. Guys like Gentile kicking you up and down.
Mm.
I'm sorry, it's conjecture, but my answer is possibly no. Right? This guy was, I mean, and then 86 comes along, and he's from another planet. Right? The goals against England, he's generated Belgium, just gets his hands on it. So yada yada yada. He goes through his career. 2008, he becomes the Argentina manager. Okay, great. They're coming to Scotland. Coming back to Scotland for his first ever game against Scotland as a manager, where he scored his first goal, Hampden. But they're training at Celtic Park. So the Daily Record go out and buy this trophy, right? This glass trophy of a hand holding a ball with the inscription to Diego Maradona from all the people of Scotland for scoring those 2 goals against England in Mexico 86, right? And they say to me, well, Jim Traynor said to me, get to Parkhead, present Diego Maradona with this trophy. We need a photo of Diego holding this trophy. If you don't get that, don't bother coming back, right? So I was like, oh wow, right, okay. So the pressure there. So, and he was like, I'm telling you, if you don't come back, that kind of thing. So that was the instructions. So I phoned my pal, he's a massive Maradona fan. Pal James Quinn, his name is, and I said to him, guess where I'm going? Go to Celtic Park, Maradona. And he was like, oh, brilliant. He says, look, he says, you cannot be timid and shy. He says, you have to do this. He's like, you'll regret it for the rest of your life if you don't present him with this in some shape or form. He says, even if you have to hit him in the head with it. He says, and cause an international incident. He says, you have to get some kind of picture of you and Maradona, right? And I said, okay, I'll do that. I will endeavour to do that. So we assemble in the press box. I do press box Celtic Park's up in the kind of main stand. And I'm thinking, nah. I mean, the security's unbelievable, right? It's just like frightening. But he's on the pitch. Maradona and the team are on the pitch and they're training. So I've gone like that, nah, no. I've just started walking down the stairs. And then I've got to kind of where the mouth of the tunnel is. And the wall slopes like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of sloped like that, right? And I'm waiting for him to come off the path because the training session's finished. We were told when it was finishing. Off he strolls. I was thinking, right, it's now or never. And I start shouting, Diego, Diego, Diego. And he's blanking, just blank, because he knows, I don't know what he thinks, who we are. And I go, Diego, dos, gol, Anglaterra, or Scotia, a gift. And and I don't know why, he just turns round, starts walking towards me. And I'm holding this glass trophy, and he says, for me, no, for me. And I'm like, aye, for you, a gift, a gift, a gift. And he comes towards me, and he takes it, and he's holding it, and I'm like that. And it's like that, that's the way, my face is like that, and my photographer, who I didn't even know was in the building, appears from nowhere, and he goes, Tony, I've got a shot, brilliant. Diego's like a rabbit in the headlights, I'm like, and there's a steward in the foreground in the picture, right? You'll see it in the cover of the book. He comes towards us, he gets kicked. I put him right in it. Well, with a sun outside, right? And police, security, they all weighed in. They're trying to grab the photographer's camera to get the image, and because they're raging, right? And it's Diego that's like, calm down, it's fine, it's alright. So he starts walking in, another journalist from the Sun, Ronnie Mackay, who's sadly passed away, he starts pulling out jerseys from nowhere, like Harpo Marx. He's got an Argentina jersey, a Barcelona jersey, a book, and he pulls out an ink marker pen, and Diego starts signing it, and the police and all that, and they're still jostling. And I'm like, right, Dom, let's go. We've got an image. And I phoned the desk and said, look, we've got something. And so this picture's now entered into folklore because the chapter in the book's called Imperfect Picture, Perfect 10. And and the fact that it's taken on arms and legs was when Diego died, sadly, last month, people were phoning me and texting me and saying, your pal Diego died and we thought of you. And I was like, wow, it's the most famous footballer in the world. And I'm a wee guy from Scotland, and I'm like, and it's just moments like that, and you say, do you know what? Thanks very much. It's
amazing.
You can't write that.
You couldn't even imagine it.
No, you
when
can't.
You've seen that young boy playing in '79.
Aye. And that, many years later, you're, what was it, 29 years later?
And people now ask, can I shake the hand that shakes the hand of God?
And I was in a nightclub in East Kilbride. The brilliant line, a boy comes up, comes into dry ice, I get the fright of my life. He's like, you're him, aren't you? And I'm like, who? And he went, you the guy that met Maradona? I says, yes, I did. And he went, can I shake the hand that shook the hand of God? You're in a nightclub in East Kilbride, it's 2 a.m, you're half cut. He's like, what hand was it? I says, it was my right hand. Oh, he grabbed my hand, he's kissing my hand. And I'm like, what are you doing, you lunatic? But again, the appeal of Maradona, that's just what he was to people.
Magical talent.
He was just, and as you say there, I just sit there and sometimes, I just think to myself, wow, that happened, and so I've kind of chronicled that in the book and just sort of, that's kind of a kind of moment in time, and as I say, and it's caught for posterity. And I used to hate the photo, but I absolutely love it now. It's
well, the thing is, you own it. It's on the front of your book. You've
it's kind
reclaimed
of like
it.
It's one of them. I chuckle every time I look at it because it's just because of the story that precedes it, and just the bedlam and everything else that ensued. It is, and as you say, going back to Hampden '79 and. Just think, how can those two worlds possibly collide?
Mm-hmm. How did I get here?
Aye, how did I
You
get
may
here?
ask yourself.
How did I get here?
Brilliant.
How prophetic's that song?
Oh, I know.
In many ways in life.
Absolutely. Now, get yourself on Amazon, search for Anthony Haggerty and pick up a copy.
The ball, mister.
Yeah,
aye,
brilliant.
Ball, mister. Aye, so it's, if people out there would like to buy it, then I'd be very humbled and very touched at that. So.
Well, we'll revisit it once I've had a chance to read that. We'll revisit it on a Celtic State of Mind. Hopefully by then, Tony will have another Scottish Cup in the bag. But you've been a couple of times. You're welcome back sometime soon. All that's left for me to say is thanks for joining us again on a Celtic State of Mind.